Okay, you guys, let's do this. It's going to be so professional. Like, so professional. Here we go. Welcome to the Live Support Podcast with your hosts, Michele VanDusen and Colson, a couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, it's so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me on Live Support. With Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball. With June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians on Live Support. With Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Live Support.
The Live Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause. Welcome to the award-winning Laugh Support Podcast brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network. I am your host, June Colson, here with Michele with one L, Rhonda Corey's friend, Trisha's sister, never call her Shelly, Michele VanDusen. How you doing, Michele?
I am well. Thanks for that long intro, because that's right. Don't call me Shelly. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
It's my favorite. So Shelly.
Come on, Pickles.
Let's start with the fact that both of us have had a family member move out of our home this week.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
Yay.
You had a cat move out, and I had a dog.
Yes.
Okay, it's Hot Dog. It's my dad. He's not really a dog, but there's a cat and a dog. So Mr. Fox is now gone to college. For those of you who've been following our podcast, you know that Michele has been the grandmother to a beautiful kitty cat that she loves so much and lies like a dog about and says she doesn't love this cat. You've had it for how long, Michele?
I love my son. Let's clarify that very, very clearly. I don't love the cat. I like the cat. I love my son. And because I love my son, I watched his cat till his cat got old enough to go to college. And then he was old enough to go to college. And my kid goes, oh, yeah, he's got to get fixed. So then he got fixed. Then he got well. Oh, wait, we got to wait for the paperwork to go through. So now the paperwork has finally gone through. The child has taken his cat. He is at college. He sent me a picture. He's up in his little windowsill looking out at the dorm. So the cat is very happy. And I found out that apparently they're going to come home for Thanksgiving, which is a week break, a whole week.
Yes,
I'm like, why not just a day? What? No, you're not bringing this cat back to my house. And then he goes, oh yeah, and then of course Christmas, it'll be a whole month. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
no. So apparently all the cleaning I just did, scrubbing and getting every piece of fur out of my house, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter anymore. Nope. Yeah.
No. When you said the cat's leaving, I'm like, really? For a week, Michele? It's almost Thanksgiving break. It left at the end of fall break, almost Thanksgiving break, and it's coming back at Christmas. It's like a kid. It's like a kid. You think they went away, but then they come back, don't they? Well,
they come back.
My guest that moved out, I'm still trying to piece my house back together. But my daddy Hot Dog has been with us. He Monday was 4 weeks since he had quadruple bypass surgery.
Wow.
Which makes him so proud. You know what I mean? Like first they were going to do 2 bypasses, and then he's like, let's double down. Well, then they told him it was going to be 3. And like most people, if you came out of surgery and they're like, you know, we're so sorry, but we had to do 4, they'd be like, oh my gosh, 4. But he was like, yeah, that's right. 4. Like he says it with pride to people. He's like, yeah, I just had quadruple bypass surgery. So he's been hanging out. He's been hanging out here at my house, and he's had the downstairs bedroom, and I set up a recliner in there, and he had a big screen TV. He had his own kind of man cave downstairs. And Michele, he didn't want to leave. Hot Dog was not ready to go. He was set up.
I've stayed at your house. I didn't want to leave either. You treat your guests amazing. It's like better than a 5-star resort. Really. Yeah. You've got the pool in the back. You've got the snacks on the pillows. It's amazing.
Well, Yeah, we've had people who've tried to stick around, but my husband and I have been up here in the office. Like if you saw the other side of this room, it's absolutely frightening. It's laundry and paperwork and bags and suitcases and it's just a hot mess. But his final day with us was on Halloween, and my mom passed away in May. And my mom, that was our holiday. She would always sit on the front porch and harass small children. She would scold them if she told them to get 2 pieces of candy and they grabbed 3. She was calling them out. Yeah, she was calling them out. But I have a video of my dad. I should have sent it to you. I have a video of my dad. He took the post where my mom would sit on the front porch and hand out the candy. Hot dogs sat out there, and he had a lawn chair. He had a bucket of candy, and he had 2 packs of Marlboros. Yeah, quadruple bypass. Still 2 packs of Marlboros at his side, and he was smoking a cigarette, holding a big bowl of candy, and no one
Never
was
smoke,
coming.
kids.
Nobody
Never
was
smoke.
No. Nobody was coming up to get candy from him. He was just a freight train over there. And like we live in a pretty kind of fancy type neighborhood over here. So, all the like soccer moms are like, no, Kimmy, don't get candy from the Marlboro man. Like he looks dangerous. So I came down. I was like, Dad, is this the game plan? Like you just keep smoking and nobody will take your candy? And he goes, pretty much. So we have a lot of leftover candy. We have a lot of leftover candy.
You can deliver that. You can mail it. It ships very well.
That's
Just saying. My address.
Yeah, I could ship it to you because you know what I don't buy? I don't buy chocolate. I will buy bags and bags of hard candy like weeks before Halloween because if chocolate is in my house, chocolate is not in my house very long. Like it'll never make it to the trick-or-treaters. So yeah, you got to know your limits. But listen, talk about limits. We have hit the limit on an amazing guest to wrap up season 2. Didn't know I spoke Spanish, did you? Season 2 of the Laugh Support Podcast.
That was Spanish for no.
Oh.
Because you said didn't know how to speak.
I thought that was
like
9. No. No, that's German.
That's German.
Michele, we're not a bilingual podcast. Stop it. Listen. This witty banter is over because we have an amazing guest on the show today. And this gentleman was the inspiration for the Laugh Support Podcast. So tell us, who is our season finale guest on season 2 of Laugh Support?
On season 2. Okay, so real quick intro for this guy. This comedian and podcaster, he's on his way to becoming a media mogul with his hot breath media empire. Let's welcome to the Laugh Sport Podcast, JOEL BYARS. There he is.
Nice.
Dab.
And we started with a dab. Oh my God. You know what? We could go ahead and just shut this thing down. You know what I'm saying?
So soon there.
JOEL BYARS, welcome to the now award-winning Laugh Support Podcast. We won an award on the Creative Motion Network on Roku TV. Yes, we did.
Wow.
And we are on the Hot Breath Comedy Network. And Joel, you inspired Michele and I to start this podcast last year. We are now wrapping up season 2. You are our very first guest that we interviewed. And a lot has changed about our podcast. Look at this. We have a theme song now. Tell us what you thought about that theme song.
I love the theme song. I hope Michelle's all right with you calling her short several times to a melody. You're good with that?
Yes, it made me laugh so hard. I'm like, we're using it. And I had to cut that down. It was like 5 minutes long.
Oh, yeah.
I cut it down for that. So
I loved it. And that's what inspired me to even reach out to you guys about doing a podcast together, because I was just a fan of what y'all do. And just who you are as people first, I was fans of, but then your rapport, I just knew that you guys would create magic together. So I'm glad that you're still doing it and having me back to live it. I appreciate you.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And look, we have the backdrop back there. We have our award that's on the screen. We have the Hot Breath logo because that's what got us started here. So Michele, you wanted to ask about the Hot Breath Comedy Network and Hot Breath, what's going on there?
Yeah, I just wanted to know because like I've noticed like there's been a shift and a change of what you've been working on. Because I know like you originally just worked really hard on your trophy husband special, but now
Mhm.
it's like your vision has expanded where you are becoming this media mogul. Like you've added us to your network. How many other comedians and shows are you like adding and changing? And just tell us everything. Spill it, Joel. Just spill
Well,
it.
well, this started as like a podcast. Hot Breath started as a podcast, and then it became like an online community. And now it is becoming more of like a network. You have this show on here, but we also do 2 live streams a week on our YouTube channel. And then also I'm starting to create my own like original content that's more like comedy storytelling. It's like kind of like the stories behind the comedians and their process and what they do. So I'm expanding beyond just interviewing comedians and more getting into more like video essay style content is what I'm starting to expand into. Is I just see, I don't know, like I can be ADD and just want to do a bunch of different things and jump around. So I kind of do something for a while and then find inspiration somewhere else. So I see a lot of comedians now on social media posting their stand up and posting their crowd work. So I'm always looking for like, all right, well, what's next? Or what can I do that other people aren't doing? So this new chapter is more of like the people behind the punchlines, as I like to call it. And I'm starting to share kind of those stories and really tapping into my storytelling aspect and like really learning storytelling and learning about comedians and what makes them tick and what makes them great, and really hoping to kind of build that out more. And that's on my personal YouTube channel. So there's the Hot Breath YouTube channel and now my Joel Byars. They used to be sketches and skits, but now I'm really trying to expand into more storytelling and kind of tapping into that, which I've always been interested in, but haven't really taken the time to learn. So I'm glad people are really enjoying it because I'm having a blast with it.
And everything you do is it's very well done. I mean, it's just, you don't halfway do it. Even though you said, I'm ADD, kind of bounce around a little bit. If you do it, you pour yourself into it. And it's very apparent that that's what you do. And so that's super cool. Yeah. Like Michele mentioned the one on Kevin Hart. I saw that. It's just, it's just super interesting. And you don't even have to be a comedian to find that interesting. Good storytelling will bring anybody in when you're telling a good story. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. And that is the goal, is to also tap into like a bigger, wider audience as well, of like comedy fans that enjoy learning about comedians. I know Hot Breath can be super specific to comedians sometimes, even though there's so many amazing comedian interviews on there. But that is a big part of the storytelling aspect, is like, all right, how can we tap into like a more broad audience that would just appreciate this information?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's documentary style,
Yeah.
I've watched several documentaries on stuff that I'm like, I don't care about the blue belly platypus, but somebody told the story really well. And I'm like, dude, this was really awesome. Like I couldn't turn away because they hooked me. They got me in and I had to watch the whole thing. So.
And I feel like people only see one side of comedians a lot of the time, and it may just be them on stage, and then that's all they really know about them. So I think comedians are so interesting and complex. And what I've learned is like comedians can do so many different things beyond just tell jokes. So to really give insight into that side of comedy is something I don't think is really out there yet. So I'm really hoping to kind of like with the podcast, interviewing comedians about how they do what they do from like a skill set level. I think getting into the story behind comedians is another angle that hasn't really been tapped into. So I'm real excited about that, and have really been pouring everything into that new YouTube channel. And I'm real excited about where it's going.
It has a TMZ kind of feel to it.
Oh, the tea.
I'm actually kind of curious. Will there ever be like a stalker video where now, like, we get some video footage of you, waiting outside, like the green room or backstage, out at the door, just like, I hope, Kevin Hart will come out here and talk to me because here, like oh, look at him roll up on such and such. I got to see his shoes. I don't know, some kind of stalker type.
It's very possible. I can't rule out any
trash.
Yeah, I literally can't rule out anything. I could see that being very possible for sure. And if I don't get arrested first. So.
I think it could be because I love alliteration. I think it needs to be buyer in the bushes. Buyers in the bushes, right? Right? Yes, and then he just jumps out of the bushes at comedians.
This is like Bigfoot just out in the wild, just stalking comedians.
Yes. You could stalk comedians, but then you could also, have the bush, and then you could jump out and start telling people jokes. Yeah. Like you could do so much with buyers in the bushes. Like that's hilarious.
Yeah. Because like I live with hunters. This is what's funny. Okay, so I live with hunters. They have ghillie suits. You know what a ghillie suit is? I mean, it's like a swamp man. Like I can see you in a ghillie suit jumping out of the bushes. But I just realized when I said hunter. So the first time when Joel was doing the Right 10, back when it first, like during 2020, there was a small group of us. So whoever won the joke of the day, he actually interviewed you on Fridays. Like there was, the first time that you interviewed me, Joel, I remember realizing that behind me on the couch was guns. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you were mocking me because there were guns behind me. I am not lying. Look at this.
No.
Her and her guns. Tell you what. She's
Gotta stay strapped out
I just realized I didn't take the guns out of my background.
Michele mentioned you said you live in a nice neighborhood, but apparently it comes with some perks,
well, this is how we keep it nice.
This is why.
That's how you keep it nice.
Yeah. How we keep it nice, brother. They know. Don't come in. Don't come in here causing trouble in my neighborhood. Like I got the vantage point right here from the upstairs, and no, don't. I just realized
our neighborhood. We have a sign that says concealed weapon neighborhood. So it's also a very nice neighborhood.
Yes.
We're on the east side. Yeah. My guns are under my
I have
desk.
lip balm. I don't know if
that'll save you.
It's shaped like a bullet. I don't know if that helps. But
no, those chapped lips, if it was someone coming in trying to kiss you, that'd run them off. They're right away.
They'd be like, rub it in their eyes.
We'll burn them down. I have a match strike here.
So if we're showing what we have in our area right now,
hilarious.
my son. Okay, so since we've been sleeping upstairs, my dad was in the bedroom downstairs, and my husband and I are in the spare bedroom, and then we've got a bonus room up here, and the remote control is missing. And I don't hardly ever watch TV, but I'm like, okay, I'm sitting in this giant recliner in the whatever. I want to watch TV. And my son's like, yeah, I don't know where it is. So I start taking apart the sectional. It's a teenage boy's bonus room, right? And I feel something, my hand, and I'm like, what is this? Y'all, it was a lizard. It was a lizard. It was a lizard. Okay, but it was this lizard. Okay. It's but still, it is creepy feeling, and my fingers touch this thing. For our listening audience, I think it's like a Beanie Baby lizard, but it's slimy. Do you see how slimy? Michele, why do we have to be so technical? Michele, why do you have to correct me like my big sister Bobby Joe? Why do you have to come at me when I'm wrong, Michele? Just let it be a lizard. Is a gecko a lizard? Look it up. Yes, Google it, Michele. Okay, listen.
I'm just glad the story ended with it was a lizard.
I know, me too. Me too.
So
like this,
many.
Did you save 10% on your couch insurance? That's all I want to know.
Right. So I did save on my insurance with my lizard, with my gecko. Yeah. Your imagination, that's what we are, creatives. So before I pulled that thing out, it was 100 different things that I was holding in my head that was in my brain. So yeah, we don't like surprises like that. But okay. So speaking of surprises, let's talk a little bit about, so Michele and I, now we're on season 2. And we've had some pretty amazing guests, and we've observed a lot of interesting things. Yes, some are really amazing. Some really make you work for it, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about guests. I was writing a list of guests, types of guests that we've had, and we'll see if you can add to it or if you've experienced these type of guests. So the super quiet guest, who you can't hardly hear guest. Or the one who just doesn't want to talk to you. Like you go, oh, this guest, Joel Byars, he's awesome. He's going to chit chat and he's going to be so much fun. Yes. And then they say nothing, Joel. They say nothing. Yes. What do you do? What do you do?
No.
I mean, you just keep talking. I mean, early on, it was literally, I mean, I don't want to say any names, but there are some comedians I've interviewed where I was like, you're a professional speaker.
Right.
And you can't speak, you know? So what I would do is just like keep talking or just keep asking them. I think as I got more confident in interviewing, I would just press them and like be like, oh, that's all you want to say about it. Like, but early on, you're so nervous that I would just talk through the awkwardness. But then you kind of can work it out of them. And it can also help to ask, starting an interview with like talking about what they're most interested or excited about. And that can come through research of something they're real excited about. You can kind of open up with that topic, and then that'll get them talking and more comfortable. But there is a rapport and a comfort level that you have to like create with the guest for them to really open up, and you get those golden nuggets out of them.
Michele is really great about, well, one, her theory is that we have quiet guests because I won't shut up, but that's okay, Michele. That's okay. That's okay, Michele.
We can't get a word in edgewise. That's why. Why is Michele so quiet? Can't get a word in edgewise.
Yeah. I said this next season we're gonna do and now it's time for a segment we call "Shut Up, June," and then we'll just let Michele talk. But Michele has been great. I'm glad you mentioned that. Michele has been great about, like, definitely in season 2. She's much better about doing the research on the guest, or it'll be somebody that she did comedy with 10 years ago or 15 years ago or whatever, and she will bring up something that they hadn't thought about in years. Well, she'll be like, "Oh, I remember in like 1987 when you were such and such did whatever," and they're like, "Oh wow, man, I hadn't thought about that in years." And she really does a great job of paying attention to the guest and pulling out. There'll be projects she pulls out, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I forgot I even did that," and that'll fill that gap for sure.
Yeah, that research is crucial.
Life, Joel. Oh.
But I love, she's like, Michele fills in the gaps where June isn't talking. She fills in the gaps with the interview is what it sounds like.
We interview each other, really.
I have to wait for June to take a breath, and then I get 2 seconds in.
But yeah, the research is crucial. I mean, that's such a great way to stand out from other shows, you know, that like you want your guests to come on your show and remember it and want to tell their friends about it and tell their friends to come on the show, you know, and big part of that is like taking it seriously, doing the research, having an interesting conversation beyond just like a mundane talk that anyone could do on any podcast.
Yeah. And well, Michele also has, like, she's been a comedian for a long time, and she's also been a fan of comedy for a long time. So she's always supported comedians. So she's got so many books, so many t-shirts that comedians wrote. She may have never read the book, but she bought the book, you know, like she supports the comics that we have on, right? Who knows? Like if she's, you know, if she actually read all of them, I couldn't have, no way. But that helps too, when you like hold up the t-shirt or something that she bought when she saw them 10 years ago or whatever. It's super cool to see her do that. So
for sure.
But she still doesn't. She doesn't have my t-shirt, do you, Michele? Tell them why you don't have my t-shirt, Michele.
Because when I had your t-shirt in my hand, it went to Bob Smiley, and Bob Smiley wore it, and he was wearing the "If you can't beat him, tase him" shirt, which is such a great shirt. But the one that I want is the "Oops a Daisy," because it has VanDusen on there, right? Or that's part of the joke.
Well, part of the joke is VanDusen. Yeah. So one of my characters, so the hateful cheerleader in one of my bits, her name is Daisy VanDusen. Which is okay, because tell him what you did, Michele.
One of my jokes is I have a friend named June who's afraid to eat organic. She thinks she's going to catch a GMO.
Oh, nice.
So I get to be the dumb blonde in her joke, and she gets to be the villain in mine. VanDusen. Yeah, I literally was just on a podcast recently, and they were like, "Your co-host is Michele VanDusen," and I go, "No, I know. What about that last name?" And they're like, "She sounds evil, like she could be like she's gonna take over the Marvel world or something." Like they were having this whole conversation about Michelle's last name. So.
Yes. I think I will.
And then you meet her and you're like, "Oh, she's nice."
Yeah.
She's a fly.
She's super. Yeah, she's super sweet. I mean, she yelled at me this season, Joel. She yelled at me one time, and I'll never forget it. We had a guest coming on. We were both very excited about. So let's talk about other challenges with podcast. Time zones. Time zones.
Yeah.
Time zones. Scheduling. Yeah. Scheduling. Time zones. Yeah.
Scheduling and time zones. So we had a guest. Her name was Sylvia Traymore Morrison, and she was the very first African American female impressionist of all time.
Awesome.
Her first manager was Red Fox.
Wow.
Yeah, she toured with Whitney Houston. These are the caliber guests that we've had on this season. She toured with Whitney Houston. I met her at the LOLGCA conference in Virginia, and we became fast friends. And just like I just absolutely adore and respect and love this woman. She's fantastic, and she agreed to come on our podcast. And Michele got the time zones mixed up, and I'm like, but I didn't know that. And she's not responding to my text messages, and she's not coming on. And I'm like, my main concern is like, is she okay? Because the podcast will wait, right? Because when you're working with a partner, it's both of you guys have to be in the flow. And I'm thinking the podcast, like, I'm not worried about the podcast at this point. Sweet Sylvia, I loved her. I was excited about her, but I wanted to make sure that, like, Michele, she hadn't gotten hurt or something happened to somebody in your family. So she finally pops on and she's like stirring around and getting stuff. And I go, hey, like, slow down. Are you okay? Like, I literally want to know, are you okay? And she goes, what? No, I'm not okay, June. And I was like, oh, dang.
Yes, queen.
What? And I go, okay. And she goes, I got the time zones messed up. And she's like getting all this stuff together. But she knew how important. But I was like, okay, well, she is okay. I'm going to let that one slip. I'm going to let that one go. Because she don't know. That trailer park side of me, I just was sipping my tea.
I don't recall this. I'm pretty sure that was a dream you had. I don't think I've ever yelled at you.
Recall, she suppressed it. Yeah. She blacked it out.
She snapped on me, Joel. But like, so has Yoshi, you do talk about you and Yoshi get together and do a podcast. Yes.
Yeah. We do a live stream every Tuesday on the YouTube channel where we give joke feedback to comics. And we've been doing that for a while now. It is a lot of fun. But I mean, there hasn't been any time zone issues because we're in like the same time zone and we don't have a guest coming on. Like, the schedule is what it is every week.
Right.
But Yoshi does have like children. He has like a whole family outside of this silly gooseness that he does with us every week. So there have been several times where he's either been late because he dropped his kid off at like soccer practice or had to pick his kid up from school, or in the middle of it, what I've started to pick up on is if he's doing like this, if he covers his mouth, he's talking to his kids on the other side of the curtain next to him. And I started to pick up on it. He would start to like, if I'm talking and he's like looking around and covering his mouth, I know he's like having to parent while we're online giving, silly joke feedback. And he's like trying to raise a family on the other side of this curtain.
Right.
So it's so much fun. But yeah, no, there hasn't been any yelling or anything. But Yoshi was also the DJ at my wedding. So he has seen me cry. A suspicious amount. So he always has that on me if anything ever did happen.
Michele, she came to my mom's funeral and laughed. So does that count?
Oh, well, you laugh to keep from crying. I get it.
Wow. No.
She just blowing up your spot out here.
Listen, you have to listen to that episode. So Joel, have you ever had this happen? We had a guest on who was fantastic. Her name is Sherry Nettles. And she literally, like, she has a testimony about how, like, she was, the doctor told her she was, she had cancer. She was going to pass away, like, very soon. Get your stuff in order, that kind of thing. That was like 15 years ago. And so, And so as we were having this conversation, like, she would talk about something and then she'd be like, oh, well, that person's dead. And then the next thing she would say is, oh, yeah, that person passed away last year. And then she's like, oh, yeah, well, I started that bit when I found out I was going to die. And so like we're laughing about all of this death, and we're like, this is the most morbid episode. Literally the next week my mom passed away.
Yeah.
But this is how comedy works, though. Like I literally I found the irony and humor in the fact that like the last podcast I did was like we were laughing about death. This, right? So then so we started the next podcast with, well, we just want to tell you that Sherry Nettles killed my mother. So but yeah. Yeah. But Michele really did. She drove all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Kentucky and was there, you know, at my mom's funeral. And my family in all circumstances, especially the most difficult, you know, my dad recently, with him staying with me, we were talking about kind of the history of humor in our family. And he said, you know, we have always used comedy to smooth out the rough spots in our life. And I thought, man, that's it. That's it. That says it all. But literally, Michele like was the last person to go through and hug my dad and at my mother's casket. And my dad popped off something hilarious about my mom being buried with her dentures, so that so that when he dies and he gets there, that she can be prepared to chew his Heine. But he didn't say Heine. You know what I'm saying? Clean podcast. Michele bust out laughing. She's like standing there.
And it couldn't stop. It was just, oh my gosh. Yeah. So once you meet Hot Dog, you've met Hot Dog. And then June's comedy is just that much funnier because you're like, oh, this dude is seriously real. And June is barely touching the tip of the iceberg of the hilarity that her family is. So once you meet him, Joel, you know you've met him and you can't stop laughing in the most inappropriate time, you know, just and then it's that laughing, crying phase that now you just can't stop. And you're like, just get me out of here. Just get me out of here. And you're like, oh, but first let's move the casket. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh. It was just
But that's what happens. Like really, when you're doing podcasts, life happens. Yoshi's raising kids. They're coming in and out. We've had my dog, Reginald. Reggie's busted through the door, you know, because they're setting off bird cannons across the street and bird
cannons.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
You're just gonna glance over that like that's in every neighborhood ever.
So they not. Well, you've heard of potato cannons? Have you seen those? Yeah. So instead of a potato, I can't. Instead of a potato, they put a bird in. No, Joel, they don't shoot birds out of a
21 bird salute.
It's called bird abatement. I live on a creek, like in a community that's surrounded by water and trees and a ridge
and guns.
And when the blackbirds like migrate here, they settle in trees and stuff. And so they basically, it's like sound cannons that go off, and it keeps the birds from like nesting all in one spot for days. It just keeps them moving on to the next location. Cause you know, I live in a fancy neighborhood. We can't have no birds in our trees here. There's no bird poop in this subdivision.
Hilarious.
Okay. So but life happens. Life really happens. And you just, you keep going. You do, you know, you do what you do. But what we found, and I wondered if you've had this experience, we've had opportunities during this time since we were doing this last year. And now this year, you know, last year people were still in shutdowns. We had a comedian from Canada who couldn't come in and out of the US. There was just so much going on. And we found some really neat conversations and connections that the comedians needed at the time, not on the air, but conversations before the podcast or after the podcast. Yeah. And I wondered if you had that experience doing your podcast throughout this time where you got to talk to comics that were maybe struggling or had something going on in their life that they just kind of, another comic just seemed like somebody they could tell that to.
Oh my gosh. I've gotten like messages that like the podcast saved their life. Like, I mean, during the pandemic, especially, it's like, I mean, I know for me, you know, I was 10 years into comedy. Like I was a touring headliner, and then overnight I'm unemployed.
Right.
So like literally, like I wake up and I'm unemployed. So you're like, what? So I mean, listen, I mean, it was a crazy time for everyone. I'm not saying mine was any different or more dramatic, but like, I think during the pandemic, especially when so many people were trying to find a direction or a community or support or an outlet to just distract themselves from the pandemic, and like the Hot Breathiverse really create a lot of connections that, I mean, it's created lifelong friends that people are now like doing shows together, or they're doing other projects together, and it's been so great to like start meeting these people as well. I mean, I'm starting to meet a lot of the members in real life, and I'm starting to like, I'm getting booked from members as well. And like when I meet these people, a lot of them have a story of like how Hot Breath helped them at this certain time or another. And it's helped me just as much, you know, and it's really, we talk about the power of comedy and how like one thing is you stand on stage and do jokes, but like the power of comedy is like goes way beyond just like telling a punchline. And it really does create a connection and a lot of levity in uncertain or otherwise sad or scary times. So that's probably been the most rewarding part of it all, is getting to meet the people and hear their stories, and really just something that started as a podcast, now this like community where people actually find purpose. It's very rewarding.
You're like a lifeline. I mean, that's what's so neat about you, Joel, is out of watching all the comedians prior to the shutdown, you know, you took your time to be like a hub, and you weren't competitive with other people. You were inclusive. You're like, you know what? Let's come this way. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I loved watching how in the Hot Breath writers group that you'd be like, okay, we're positive here. We're not going to cut someone else down. We're going to just always be positive. Always positive. You know, if you're going to take that negativity somewhere else, there's other places you can go be a jerk. You didn't say that, but here we're going to encourage one another. We're going to build our comedy. You know, we're not going to just sit and do nothing. So it was just amazing how you spent what 300 and some days or whatever.
It was over it was 400. It was over 400 days. I don't remember how many exactly, but it was over 400 days in a row live streaming.
Yeah. That you spent, and you continue to build your comedy muscle, and you were teaching people how to do the same thing, and you built this community that people do support each other, and that a lot of people didn't do that during the time. You know, everyone was like shut down, shut away, and I'm so glad to hear that, you know, people did reach out and say, you saved my life. I like that. That's amazing. And you should be really proud, really proud about what you've done and accomplished, even though that wasn't what you set out to do. You know what I mean? Like you set out to like, I'm going to do my comedy. Let me invite some people, and then to watch it grow. That's why I'm saying, you know, you're like a media empire now. That's why you're the mogul.
Yeah.
Comedy mogul.
Well, and the thing too is, someone I just heard this at the LOL GCA. Someone said, and it just rings into my brain, is that there's a difference between being invited and being welcome somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of places you're invited to be a part of, in these groups and things like that. But you fostered an environment that people aren't just invited to come in, but they are very welcome. You feel welcomed when you're a part of that. And it's not a group that cancels people if they step out of bounds a little bit or whatever. It's something that's handled very just with kindness and respect to people. Like, oh, you know, yeah, I get where you're going or what you're trying to do here, but this is how we keep it in this group. And I've found that's just not the norm, to be able to conduct the train like that without it going off the rails, with so many people from so many walks of life. I mean, you've got comedians that, you know, that are Christians like myself and Michele. You got comedians that are atheists. You got comedians that are, you know, in the US. You got comedians that are in India. I mean, they're all over the world. And somehow you've created this kind of harmonious, welcoming environment that all of these people that would seemingly not have anything in common find something in common in this group. And that's just awesome. And it inspired this, and it is something that for me, I was one of those comics who I quit my job in 2020, And then everything shut down. And I remember like in the morning, just kind of sitting there staring at the ceiling. And I looked over at Facebook and there's this guy with a notepad and like 4 people. And he's like, I'm going to write for 10 minutes. That's what we're doing. There was like 4 people that were watching. And then like a few days later, there was like 5 or 6. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to start doing this thing. And I remember for a long time, it was like 12 people. There was like 12 of us. And then you were like, oh, we got 25 in the room. And then golly, just a few months later, it was like 125 people popping in and out. And it was just something that was needed. But that shows that, if you do something quality and you find something that people need, if you build it, they will come, right?
Yeah.
And you've been building it and people are coming. So the locations, talking about different parts of the country, I can tell you Michele is much like she's like the Santa tracker. You know what I'm talking about? Like on Christmas Eve, the news dude goes and they're like, Santa Claus is over and they're telling you up to date that's how she is about our podcast. She's the podcast tracker. She's like messaging me all the time. And she's like, we're in Europe, we're in Canada, we're in Australia, we're in India. She has a map. She's look at her little colored map. So for our listeners, Michele has a printout of the United States. Looks like maybe a kindergarten map printout.
Thank you.
And she's colored in. So what are the different colors that you're showing us, Michele? Is it just because you ran out of, or you lost one crayon, or?
Oh, no.
It looks great, Michele.
Colored pencils.
Right.
No,
is it color coded?
What was close to me to color with at the time. That's why.
Okay.
So if you have, Joel, if you have anybody in Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Kansas, North Dakota, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and West Virginia, Delaware, tell them to start listening, would you please? Oh, and
Let's
Mississippi.
Go.
Yeah, we don't have any listeners in there. Oh, and Alaska.
You will.
Angie, come on, download our podcast one time, Angie. I know
we got to reach out specifically to our one friend. I have a friend who's a doctor in Alaska. Yeah. He's pretty serious. I don't think
this is
oh my gosh,
map.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So
the whole world. For people listening on the podcast, she's holding up a map. It's very visually stimulating when you're listening to audio only.
It is. It is great. Yeah. It is great to
see all the continents except Antarctica. So anybody know any scientists out there?
We gotta get
listen one time. Just one time.
Gotta get Antarctica.
That's our biggest goal. I hear that's the safest place to live on the planet is Antarctica. So I don't know.
And the cold.
Maybe they're safe because they're not listening to podcasts.
I'm gonna say or because there's no one there.
Well, that could be the other reason. Look at that, Michele and the maps.
This is India.
That is so cool.
A couple spots that aren't filled. I would say the names, but I don't know them. So
isn't that crazy though? And I know your podcast is worldwide as well. And to think that like somebody in Australia is listening right now to the podcast, like that's insane. Does that blow your mind, Joel? Like how far and how many people that you reach?
Yeah, it's so fun to like get to connect with these people. I mean, I just did a comedian in Australia. I was just a guest on his podcast. Like it's amazing the people you can reach if you just put out something like, with the right intention, like you guys are doing, just putting out something that people can really gravitate towards. It really is. I'm beyond grateful for what started as me interviewing my friends about how they write jokes, to now getting to connect with comics all over the world. It's something you could never like start with that intention. And it's just like a fun side effect of just doing what you love and creating what you wish existed. And then like you talk about with the community, it's like, I was just creating something I wish existed. When I came up in comedy, it was very negative and competitive. So I was like, oh, well, this community is going to be positive and supportive. And that was just the intention. And then from there, it's just grown and expanded. But it all started with like, what do I wish existed? And it helps me just as much as other people saying it helps them. Like it helps me just as much, if not more. So I'm just grateful for the whole experience.
Now, Michele, you talk about connections. I was opening for Jeff Allen. It got delayed because in December last year, a tornado actually hit here in my hometown. Like a historic tornado ran through the entire county that I live in. And so we had to cancel the show that Jeff was doing here, Jeff Allen, here at the theater. And we, in the in-between time, had him on our podcast. And Michele, as we were talking, Jeff says to Michele, yeah, you know, I'll be heading to Oklahoma sometime soon. So just reach out to me. So Michele, speaking of connections, so what did you do this last weekend, Michele? We're going to talk about this on a previous podcast, but tell Joel what you just did.
I opened for Jeff Allen two shows.
Two shows?
Yep. Two shows. Yeah, because he was in Tulsa and then he was in Oklahoma City. And
oh my
so
gosh,
two
that's
different
so
clubs.
cool.
Yeah, it was really cool, really intimidating. And being able to do that because he's my friend. Like that was what was cool. Yeah, and having to, like, I had to do all the footwork for it. So I had to contact the club. I had, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, how do I write this email? Jeff said, like Jeff said it was okay. And because he was on our podcast, he said those words. Yeah, when I'm in Oklahoma, you can open for me. And I'm like, okay. I was personally invited. That's how I did it. I was personally invited by Jeff to, so it was really cool. It was really, yeah. But I'm not going to talk about it because you can listen to the podcast about it before. But yeah, so that was really cool having those connections because I know you've made a lot of connections. And we're an award-winning podcast, and now you're an award-winning Good Intentions Award to Joel Byars. Just letting you know. Yeah. It's from our podcast to you.
Thank you and you spelled my name right. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. So you are officially, hold it back up, the Laugh Support Podcast Good Intention Award-winning comic. That's what you are, Joel. That's what you are. You probably won other awards, but this one, when Michele just basically for our listeners, Michele likes to do a lot of stuff. They just have to figure out.
You see on the video, yeah.
She drew a trophy on a piece of paper with a Sharpie. So that's,
or a wine glass. I'm not sure. You can decide.
Like a chalice, perhaps, maybe a goblet.
She has a goblet. Joel
Grail?
won the goblet.
The Holy Grail.
That's right. And then I'm like, oh, I should have made this into a microphone instead. Whoops. Oh, well. So
no, I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that's super cool.
You can brag.
My wife will be so proud. Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that impresses our spouses. And, my children are so impressed with nothing. I could literally tell them, I'm going to open for Kevin Hart and tour 27 cities with him. And they'd be like, whatever. You love Kevin Hart, kids, but you love Kevin Hart. And they're like, yeah, but why's he got you coming on?
Yeah, why you?
What?
What's the catch? Yeah,
what did you do, Mom? But hey, okay, so let's talk about real quick before we let you go here, Joel. Dry bar. So you've recorded a dry bar special. We've had a lot of comics on here this season that have recorded and kind of in the same situation as you. Dry bar is, you're not ever really sure when it's coming out, but it's super exciting when it does. So you are one of our guests that has recorded, but it's not quite out yet. So tell us about that.
Yes. Well, dry bar, when you talk about like things you wish existed, dry bar was probably the most positive experience I've had in my comedy career. Like you get treated like royalty there. It's so amazing. Everyone is so nice, so accommodating. From the staff to the audiences, like the entire experience was absolutely amazing and really made you as a comedian be like, oh, this is why I do this. Like really, you can tell not only is just like the content they create high quality, but the experience they create both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes of that whole production is absolutely incredible. And I really hope that spreads to other productions and other communities and whatnot, because like I have nothing but positive things to say about my experience and I'm excited for it to come out. But it's all, as they say, it's all on God's time. You just let go, let God. So that's what we do in here. But I'm so
hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I'm just grateful to be able to have done it and to have that opportunity. Because it really was something that I was a fan of it. I love the idea of like they did. They like created they kind of filled a gap. Like there was not really a clean comedy platform that really gave lesser known comedians the opportunity to find a new fan base. And they're the same with the audiences. You know, there wasn't a place for people who enjoy clean comedy. There wasn't a place where they know they can go and it's going to be clean and safe for the whole family, which is what I always, from the beginning of my career, I've always wanted to do shows where there's like grandkids to like grandparents at the show. So this was an opportunity to really showcase what I've been working on for over 10 years and to really connect with other like-minded people and to build that relationship and continue to create together. I mean, I recommend it for anyone who wants to go see the live production or a comedian who wants to perform. I recommend like taking advantage of it and pursuing it for sure.
Now, Michele has been on a dry bar. It's not out yet. She was front row audience. Show them that smile, Michele. Show them that smile. Look at that.
Oh, I recognize you. Yeah.
You see that? Yeah. She can't help but the camera gravitate towards her. I mean, I was sitting right beside her and they didn't. We were front row.
I got your shoulder.
Corey's.
Your shoulders in there. Yeah. Your shoulders in there. You're welcome.
Yeah. Maybe the camera couldn't pan high enough to get to my big bobblehead. I'm like, no. We don't need a bobblehead on this one. So yeah, we went and watched Rhonda Corey record her dry bar special and hung out. And even as the guest of the comedian, we were treated like royalty. They were so kind and accommodating and all of that stuff. So I cannot wait for yours to come out. I know that the audience there absolutely loved you. And when you talk about the clean platform, I know I mentioned Sylvia before, but she and I were having a conversation and she was talking about like female comics who can't do clean at all and how she tries to mentor them. Cause she says, you know, if Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or whoever, you know, the late night talk shows are, if you can't do a solid 5 minutes without being able to be clean, those are opportunities you're never going to get because they can't put you on, even though they support non-clean comics. They can't put you on if you can't do a little something to be on network television. And you know, and that's kind of goals for a lot of people. And so, and that's the thing too, at Dry Bar is they don't necessarily only book clean comics, but they only book comics who can work clean. And really work clean. And so it's even if you don't want to be a clean comedian all of the time, it's not a bad skill set to have in, because like you said, if you can perform in front of the grandkid and the grandpa, it's limitless. Your opportunities, there's not a lot of doors that are going to shut because of your material. It just gives you more opportunity when you can do that. Don't you think?
Yeah. There's just more, the more people you can entertain, the more tickets you can sell. You know what I mean? So instead of this couple getting a babysitter and coming to see you, now they can bring their kids and now they can bring the aunts and the uncles. And now what were 2 tickets is now 10 tickets all of a sudden. And it's also, I never tell comics they should or shouldn't be clean, but I recommend being able to be clean.
Right.
Like, I mean, you know, if there's a corporate gig and they need you to perform for 20 minutes at their luncheon and it's going to pay you more in one gig than you made at like 10 open mics or 10 brewery shows, you know, you want to be able to take that gig confidently. So it's a skill set. I've even interviewed, you know, like Mark Normand, who's not a clean comic, but his advice, if he said if he could change something, he would start out clean, because he said there's just more work when you can be clean. So it's true. It's definitely, it's not a path you have to pursue, but it's definitely a skill you need to at least learn just to help your own comedy career and the business side of it.
Now, Michele, hearing that, now that you've heard that, are you willing to try and take all those dirty words and that bad content out of your comedy?
Young lady, this is an intervention.
I don't know. Look, pure sugar, people. Pure sugar. Oh,
that's true. Just pure, clean, and sweet.
Comedy. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
that's right. Simply sweet. Okay. Well, thank you for this intervention, Joel. Thank you for agreeing to come on again to our podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. Oh my gosh.
we're sticking it out, buddy. We're still here. We're waiting for our first paycheck. So let us know when that's coming. No.
When I get mine, you'll get yours. I promise. It'll trickle down.
Oh, it's the trickle down economy. That's what it is. It's the trickle down. There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we
are really tall, so that's going to take forever to get down here. That's all I'm saying.
I know. Oh my gosh. And you know what? I was supposed to. I just remembered because I was in a COVID coma. Like I literally was horribly sick with COVID last year, and I was actually going to get to work with Joel in Indianapolis, and ended up having to cancel that. And I was so excited to be able to like stand by a comic and have my high heels on and then be taller than me. You know, I was like, I want a picture by someone super tall. But hey, so speaking of doing shows, tell us really quick. So this will air probably close to the end of November. So tell us what you got going on. If there's anything you want people to know about the end of December.
It'll be in December.
Okay, so probably the beginning of December. Okay, so as our season finale. So at the end of December and going into the new year, is there any place that folks can be like looking for you? You're going to be on the road where they might be able to catch you?
Yeah, I think definitely anyone listening, just listen to the podcast, Hot Breath. It's on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And go subscribe to my personal YouTube channel where I'm doing those like video comedy storytelling style essay videos. So definitely go subscribe over there. And you'll also be able to, from there, get more info on like where I'll be performing and things like that.
Awesome. That's awesome. Joel, we appreciate you so much. It looks like Michelle's trying to type in, I'm guessing you're Joel Byars. Is that right, Michele? I'm reading the expressions on her face. Okay. Well, Joel, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for inspiring Michele and I. We truly have been. I mean, it's work. It definitely is work.
Yes.
But it has been such a blessing. And like you said, so many connections that have been made. And all of that is because you inspired us to jump out of our comfort zone and do something different. And so for that, we are forever grateful. And that is why you are the Laugh Support award-winning comic, and there you go. So that's pretty awesome. So Michelle's going to kick you backstage. There it is, one more time with the trophy, goblet, or wine glass Good Intention Award, which sounds like it kind of sounds like the kid in the sports that gets the most improved. Like good intentions. It's like you tried, Joel. Good intentions, buddy.
Participation trophy. Yeah.
But Michelle's going to kick you backstage. Stick around so we can say goodbye to you. Michele VanDusen, let's tell people really quick where, scroll it because I didn't say it. Laugh Support Podcast. Okay, no, not that. Joel stuff. Go back to Joel. Go back to Joel. Okay, so Joel Byars comedy.com, Hot Breath podcast.com. He's on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, Joel Byars Comedy. So definitely check out, again, Joel Byars, and it's JOEL BYARS comedy.com. You got to spell it right if you want to find him, right? So what an awesome interview. If you'd like to see the visuals, the things that Michele was showing that Joel and I had to describe, then you can actually watch our podcast on the Creative Motion Network, on Roku TV, we're on Vimeo, and also on YouTube. And of course, you can listen to the Laugh Support Podcast anywhere that you listen to your podcast on all the major platforms. Yeah, so definitely, if you're listening, go watch. And scrolling. Listen. And Michele just keeps scrolling. The Laugh Support Podcast. Okay. Well, y'all, that's it for this episode and for the season. Michele, can you believe it's over?
Oh, finally, we're going to have a break. Oh, but that cat will be back. Oh, we need to do more episodes now.
This is what I need to do. I need to send hot dog to your cat. I need to send my dog to your cat. And then that would be good videos.
That would be hilarious. I should send the cat to the dog. There we go.
No. I'm sending the dog to the cat. All right. Well, let's send this episode into the universe. How about that? There we go. Okay. Y'all, that's it for season 2. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and hanging on with us for 2 seasons now. We will be back for a season 3. Huge announcement. I know you were all waiting to find out. We will be back for a season 3. But until then, as always, Jesus and Junebug loves you. And Michele VanDusen, tell him goodbye, my friend.
Goodbye, my friend. Thanks for listening. See you next season. Bye-bye.